Welcome to Lou Palumbo's Between the Lines. Problem solving for our future. Lou. Common sense, logic, and reasoning. Lou. The man that can't stand hate and animus. Lou. Stimulating the thought process of America. Lou. Where being right is not political, it's factual. Lou. Providing real solutions in real time. And now, here's your host, Lou Palumbo.
Today is the anniversary of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas, Texas. I would say it was a history-altering occurrence, to put it to you politely. He was a rather interesting man. I had the good fortune of having an opportunity to learn who he was before he died and then afterwards, which was really quite impressive because, a lot of what we heard about the president was something to do with his indiscretions in his personal life, which isn't really anybody's business, I might note. There might be a backstory to that as far as explanation, because as I understand it, he was pumped full of testosterone as a result of some various medical conditions he had, and that just hijacks your libido for whatever reason. I'm not scientifically or medically backgrounded, but I do know about that. But independent of that, this man grew into that job, and in my opinion, he's probably the greatest president we've had in my lifetime. Cannot say enough good words about him. The thing that was so interesting about John Kennedy was that not only was this country enamored with him, but the world was. The whole planet was enamored with this man. He had a charisma that we haven't seen since, to be very honest with you. And as I said, he grew into that job. I wish he were around today, calm the jungle. Boy, do we need some voice of reason and calm, and a voice that can make the American public believe that when the president speaks, he speaks to everyone, not to a particular agenda or not to these misguided policies that are destroying our country. That, interestingly enough, I listened to the polls, for what they're worth, tell us that 80% of America doesn't believe the country's going in the right direction. Well, nothing was supported in the way people voted on November 8th in the midterm elections. I just don't know what to say to everyone. I cannot believe that we are so divided that we cannot distance ourselves or separate ourselves from our political agenda, our political loyalty. I don't even know where to start this conversation about how misguided we are as a populace. We're losing the country. You can sit there and think we're not, but we are. Recently, and I believe I mentioned this last week, Chuck Schumer came out in a rather just disingenuous manner and said that he was going to start to promote amnesty for 11 million plus illegal immigrants in this country. 11 million people, at least 11 million people that we're acknowledging illegally crossed into our country, which is a criminal act. What's so interesting about this statement is, he didn't make it while they had control of the House or the Senate. It was a statement that was made after the Republicans regained control of the House of Representatives. So we all know it's going nowhere. So what's that ultimately about except a continuous demonstration of the wrong agenda leading this country? Guys, you need to listen to me. We need to put our swords down. You need to try to step away from your politics or this perverse word called loyalty that I'm all too familiar with as a result of being in the law enforcement community for over 49 years. Boy, do I know what that word means. I cut my teeth on it, and I believe in it. But it can be very misguiding, very perverse at times, because we're loyal at times to the wrong things. Maybe you want to be loyal to the future of your children, the future of this country. I sit back every day trying to figure out who is supposed to be benefiting from letting 5 million people cross into this country illegally since the beginning of this administration. And I'm not anti-Joe Biden, and I'm not anti-Democrat. We need a healthy Democratic Party. I've spoken to that before. I'm trying to understand who is supposed to be benefiting from these policies governing our major cities where the criminal element is operating with impunity. Who's supposed to be benefiting from that? I can't figure it out. You're certainly not doing the minority community any service, if that's what the exercise is about. I mean, we're all just sidestepping the heavy lift on that problem. And I've spoken to that before. It takes a lot of money and bodies now to create the disparity in which the minority community lives. Black Lives Matter. They just don't believe their lives matter. And there's nothing that supports the fact that they do, because we don't make any political headway on either side of the aisle. And perhaps what's most egregious is this agenda of the Democrat to make the minority community think they care about them by throwing these token programs at them. Welfare, affirmative action. I mean, guys, save us the trouble and bite into the problem. And if you really want to talk about moving forward in that, please feel free to contact me, because I can help you battle through any of these problems, whether it's the border, major cities, it's even our foreign policy. Our foreign policy, what we did in Afghanistan, unforgivable. Don't tell us about how much you care about our women, especially after you left all these women and young girls out in the cold in Afghanistan with that bogus withdrawal. Oh, yeah, by the way, we left $85 billion in weaponry there. Closed Bagram Air Base, strategic in nature. You're wondering, who's running this show here? So, CBS apparently is onto Hunter Biden's laptop. I just don't know what to say, between the remissful and selective approach of the media that's supposed to be unbiased in providing you information so you can calculate ideas about, who you want to vote for or what's important in your life. We're just sidestepping everything that seems to feed a political agenda. We watched an FBI agent, Tim Thibault, 25-year veteran, one of 13 assistant special agents in charge in the Washington, D.C. Bureau field office of the FBI, lose his job. What we're really learning is that there's a cultural problem in the FBI, not throughout the ranks, but with the management. Apparently, going to D.C. as a federal government official in law enforcement, it becomes quite dicey because of the politics that soon become attached to it. This Hunter laptop needs to be explored, and I think individuals like Jim Jordan are going to take up this mantle. And it has nothing to do with his salacious, personal life. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. I will tell you something, though, about people that are controlled substance abusers. It's almost once you're a junkie, you're always a junkie, and they just don't seem to know any boundaries, and they'll put anyone at risk, even their families. I have a feeling that's what Mr. Hunter did here. And really, the American public is entitled to know to what extent this country may have been compromised, including the office of the President of the United States. And I will say to you, this is not difficult. We just have to be interested in the truth and take us wherever it takes us, Briefly touch on Mr. Trump. I think Donald Trump needs to kind of step aside for a new generation of elected officials that can perhaps galvanize the country, because that does not seem to be his methodology. I think the mistake he just made was going after Ron DeSantis. I don't understand why you would attempt to label him as DeSanctimonious. I'm not sure most people even really understand what that word means, or to try to impugn his character, his credibility, or his performance. It speaks for itself, and it resonated through the state of Florida on Election Day. It was almost disconcerting to see the volume of red on the map. To be very candid with you, I think the people in Florida had enough of the crazy, which is what I really thought others in America would have had. I mean, I was betting my money on people that are closet conservatives, Democrats that just realize how dangerous your cities are because we're not prosecuting anyone. We're taking guns off the street in New York in record numbers. We're just not prosecuting anybody. Supposedly 85% are going unprosecuted. We selectively enforce the same way we selectively report. And I go back and say this, the single most hamstringing quantity in the country today is the media. They have totally lost focus of the exercise, and that's on both sides. I'm not picking on CNN and MSNBC. I listen sometimes to what comes out of the mouths of the people on Fox, and it's just disconcerting. Nothing good comes out of ridiculing or demeaning anybody. Look, believe me, I know that because I've done my share of it, and I've learned from that mistake. And that's exactly what it is. And I was telling the truth. But, there's a way to do that, and you do it diplomatically, and you do it constructively, and you do it with the intent of building a wall or mending a fence. I don't know what to say. I'm just in total confusion today in this country that we just elected a man in Pennsylvania who obviously has injury to his brain as a result of a stroke, who I guarantee you is not fit to drive an automobile based on standard in the state of Pennsylvania, but we're going to allow him to represent the people in the state of Pennsylvania. John Fetterman. I hope that the Republicans come out and challenge his fitness. And by the way, if that was a Republican, they should do the exact same thing. This isn't about who you're politically aligned with, guys. We've got to get this country back on course with one set of rules universally applied. I don't know how else or how many ways to say this. We're losing the country. We are jeopardizing the future of the young people here. You don't believe that's the case? Just take a look at the news. What's so sad is that what's going on the southern border is so underreported by MSNBC and CNN and other media outlets like CBS, ABC, and NBC that it's disconcerting. And you wonder, how could you be so morally bankrupt as to prevent the American public from understanding the scope of that problem? All of a sudden, it takes a little life, though, the minute, Abbott sends 50 migrants on a bus to New York City. Oh, my God. Well, guess what? That's what they're dealing with every day. And the sad part about this is we need a migration process that has some order to it, that lends to it the ability to vet people coming across the border, which, don't be lied to, folks, that isn't happening. Not at the volume of people coming across the border. And I don't even mention the gotaways. Gotaways are approaching 1 million right now. Those are individuals detected by technology, cameras and drones, for example. And we're not having any encounter with them. We don't know who they are. And you're going to see your crime rate start to creep up a little bit because a lot of the people coming in can't be employed. It's the law. This is like, I don't understand what people don't understand about the country. Please stop being distracted by your vacations, your flat screen TVs, your generations of iPhones in the car you drive, whether it's electric or gas. And don't get me going on this whole electric thing, because this is disconcerting unto itself. This incredibly beautiful, wonderful, versatile state, California. They want to jam electric cars down your throat and then tell you don't charge them. And by the way, there's an answer to the electric problem in California, because I understand the sensitivity. They have one nuclear reactor in Diablo Canyon. I got it. It's geologically unsound. Why don't you head east a little bit into the deserts and collaborate with the leadership of Nevada and Arizona and construct these state-of-the-art nuclear reactors that exist today that are almost 100% foolproof, fail-proof. Start to generate energy and feed 3 states to start with, folks. I don't know what everybody doesn't understand here, but fossil fuel isn't going anywhere, just like guns. So now I'm going to bang you around about guns. All of a sudden they're talking about gun control again with a Republican Congress. And even many of the Democratic congressional members, House and the Senate, both realize this isn't a gun problem. We have a mental health problem. We have the loss of a generation of children that we don't have the courage to account for. That's the word that's missing in the equation, courage. Now I have someone calling me. I think I'm going to try to delve into who that might be. Just bear with me 1 second. Hello?
Hello, this is Soslan.
Say your name again, sir?
Oh, this is Soslan, Soslan.
How are you, bud? What's going on? You've called me before, correct?
I have, yeah.
Good to hear from you again.
It's good. It's been, I'm calling because, that's what's going on. I've been busy, by the way.
You've been busy. That's a good thing. Better to be busy than not busy. You know that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the sad part is that I've been busy in the state of Wisconsin because I don't know if you heard, but we had a major significant shakeup going on in Wisconsin's election committee. What happened is that Janelle Branch has tendered her resignation and is now officially resigning from the Republican caucus.
Okay, and so give me the significance, the overall significance.
Oh, the overall significance is that it means that means she is no longer the chair of the election committee, and that she can no longer investigate what's really going on in our election systems. And Robin Voss is going to put someone else that he likes into it, and it's going to pretty much say that there was no voter fraud.
Interesting. You just mentioned a very interesting term, voter fraud. I'm trying to figure out why we're having such a difficult time bringing some integrity into our election process, and it's a very dangerous process. questioning
It
the
is.
outcome.
And then another thing, here's another thing that I don't understand. Okay. How is it that a couple of years way back in the early 20s, and you look at Israel and you look at these other countries that hate our guts, like China and Russia, they have 1 day voting, and by the end of the day, they know who their fascist leader is or their dictator. But when you come to America, which is supposed to be sophisticated and it's supposed to be transparent and it's supposed to be like right on the ball of it, we won't figure out until the next results until the August or November 23rd for Alaska, for instance. I mean, it just blows my mind how you can have a nation that is well advanced in technology, but somehow the voting system is back in the BC era.
Well, let me just say this, first of all. We don't have to look to China to be taught how to vote. Look to Florida,
No.
for example.
Yeah.
But, so we can talk this through. When the pandemic struck, right, it suddenly licensed the election process to have this mail-in ballot, and that just lends itself to corruption, period. That has to go. I see a lot of resistance, and I'm going to tell the truth about this, and it has no political attachments, just the truth. The Democrats don't want you to have ID to vote. They want you to be able to vote if you're not a citizen. They want to have mail-in ballots, and we just indiscriminately distribute these ballots across this country, north to south, east to west, not knowing who's really, filling them out and sending them in. We need some integrity brought to this process. But I have to say, the public has to have enough. And I just watched this election cycle, and I'm not convinced that they have. Now, I will tell you something interesting. In the state of New York, the Southern District, which is, like Manhattan and South, out to Eastern Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk counties, which are very densely populated jurisdictions. Nassau and Suffolk's population combined is greater than 38 states in this country. They went completely red, and so did upstate New York. For whatever reason, New York City seems to think it's okay that we have crime without consequences. Going back to the election cycle, we need to have you show up to vote the day of the election like we used to, identify yourself, and cast your ballot. I think they call it keep it simple, stupid.
Yes. Yes.
Do you agree with that?
And 100%. And another thing that I also like needs to be addressed is if a candidate were to drop out. For instance, we had candidates that there's 3 people running for governor, and her name was Joanne Ballinger out of Wisconsin. She stopped her campaign. She conceded way before in early September, but somehow her ballot, she was still on the ballot for the November election, and that she pretty much made up the difference. And what happened is that the Democrats hijacked it and was sending out mass text messages stating that, well, I'm Joan Ballinger and vote for like this other candidate, vote for me because I am a true patriot. Ended up being Governor Tony Evers' administration that was doing it, and he hijacked her, and it was very sick. And she came out not once but multiple times stating that she's not running for office, she's not doing all this thing. She concluded her run. So vote for Tim Michels, and she backed and endorsed Tim Michels. But at the same time, clearly our Wisconsin election WEC is confident of stealing another election, which Tim Michels was robbed of this opportunity.
I want to just interject something, and I think that this has become the consensus of many. The Democrat Party seems to outmaneuver the Republicans consistently, and I don't know if that's because they're prepared to employ devious means, and I like to believe the majority of the conservative people are pretty straightforward, but they're definitely outmaneuvering and out-strategizing the Republican Party. And what you're speaking to is a little bit of an example of that. I go back and I want to just say this to you. We need a president in this country, a leadership in this country that represents everyone. We don't have that. We need a president that, very similar to John Kennedy, can make a country feel that when he speaks to them, he speaks to everyone. We don't have that. I'm not saying we had it with Obama or Bush or Clinton either, so let me be clear about that. But right now, if we've ever had the call for leadership, it's right now, because I cannot believe how divided the country is, and all these little mechanisms you're alluding to are fueling this problem that we have. We have to I would say, re-embrace honor and integrity and trustworthiness in government to begin with. That's one thing right there. And it's just absent from the conversation, as is respect and decency and civility. Guys, I'm teaching my children better than I'm watching our elected officials and the media, operate. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to take a quick break. Stick with me for a second. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come right back, and we're going to continue this conversation. This is Between the Lines. If you're interested, it's betweenthelines.tv. I'd encourage you to become part of this conversation. We're trying to take this country in a different direction. We'll be right back. Instacart, another interesting concept. You can go to your favorite grocery stores, sign on to their application without leaving your home, the comfort of your home. Just pick out the items you'd like. They'll assign a personal shopper for you and deliver them to the point that you would like them delivered to. Another great concept, very user-friendly, and I'll be honest, we use it also. It's very effective, and they're very, very good. They're very on point. We're back, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to continue this conversation. And I'm sure you heard me mention earlier that Trump needs to kind of come to terms with the fact he needs to step aside. And not just Trump, but Clinton. Pelosi's doing it, by the way, in case you people aren't watching, and Mitch McConnell. That's a real interesting conversation about how electoral candidates were funded. But we need new leadership in this country. We need a voice of reason. We need individuals that are inclined to bring the integrity back to this country, not just in the electoral cycle, but on a day-to-day living. Dianne Feinstein's 89 years old, and I guarantee you, as I sit here in this chair, her faculties are completely gone. We just seem to lack the courage and the decency and the morality to have her move on down the road. And I'm not saying who she should be replaced by. I'm just saying somebody that has cognitive skills. We're at a crisis right now, and I can tell by your voice, you're a young guy. This is your future. Believe me, I'm positioned chronologically in life that I'm going to hop, skip, and jump through this. And, I'll get out unscathed. The rest of young Americans. And if you're 50 years old in America, you got another 40 years of this crazy. And we have to turn the corner at some time, but you have to elect the right people. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Well, and then here's another thing that just absolutely blows my mind. So not only is this generation, like my younger generation and stuff, I mean, not only have they clearly forgotten history, because when you go after a political opponent, like, right after President Trump announcing his running for president and stuff, and then you have the fascist regime then going after him through a special counsel and through the FBI and stuff, and weaponizing the FBI and weaponizing the IRS. I mean, that brings me to, I did my homework because and I also just, remember it because I grew up in a country where people did that. It's called the KGB. It was Putin's go-to military, and it was his go-to personal handlers. So if he didn't like you, he would take you out, and he would investigate you until like your career was ruined and everything else. So what are we different now than compared to Russia and China? We're not different. We're the same.
Well, what we're more similar to, believe it or not, are some of these countries we refer to as banana republics.
Sure. I call it Fascist Republics. But.
Okay, well, it's semantics. I'll go with your term as well, not to be contentious. But, what we're having right now is, everybody undermining each other. I have to say something that, people just can't wrap their arms around. I listened to an explanation for letting 11 million people into the country through amnesties because we're at zero population growth. Has anyone considered maybe we need to stop growing the population of this country? Because I'll give you some numbers that are startling. Starting with the year I was born, we had 150 million people. We're at 335 million people. At the millennium, we had 200 million people. We have another 135 million since then. Everything becomes exponentially more difficult to manage as you grow it. And if there's ever a time we need unity or unification in government so we can properly manage this country and take care of it, it's now. But it just doesn't seem to be part of this discussion. I think I'm not discouraging. I'm not saying either way, have kids, don't have kids. I would never be so bold. But the fact that we have 335 million people, I'd like someone in Washington, D.C. to tell me if we have a certificate of occupancy on the country. Because the truth be told, we're not taking care of the people that are here, and I think you're aware of that. First of all, starting so shamelessly with our veterans. We're building living complexes for people illegally entering the country, and our veterans are living on the street, and that's a fact. And I defy anyone to come in and sit down with me and try to arbitrate that. Our young people are on the street. Elderly people need to be taken care of. Our children, our veterans. I mean, and we want to take on more people that, by the way, the taxpayer is going to have to foot the bill on. This is like, I don't even understand. How could the American public be so off course? How could we be in such a divide on this issue? We are a fairly educated populace, comparatively speaking, to 50 years ago. More people have gone to college. It's supposed to broaden your thinking and your horizons and make you understand things on a different plane. Traveling does that as well, by the way. You need to get out and visit this country, which many people sitting in D.C. have not done. This is an incredible discussion that we're having today. And ultimately, I just don't know what it's going to take. Maybe the country has to falter and become crippled in totality before we get on the road back. Let me ask you this. How old are you? You're from Russia, am I correct?
Yes, I came to America in 2006.
And how old were you back then?
I was 8.5.
You were 8.5. Okay. I can do math. I can figure out the rest. And you've gone to school here, I gather?
So I joined the military instead of going to college, and I joined the Air Force. And I was traveled the world, and and then I got out because I got really sick. I was paralyzed from the neck down, and then it took me about 1.5 years to get fully better. And now I just go traveling around speaking to people. But I want to bring up to a very interesting point that you brought up. Another thing that I found out the American government is doing is that they're enabling for people, like, for instance, you have people like in the Indian, like, reservations, because Wisconsin's got reservations, and it's got, like, Indian reservations.
You mean the indigenous people?
But the biggest problem that they're facing is alcoholism. It's an addiction, and that they're not doing anything. They're not giving them,
repeat that again. What's the addiction?
Alcoholism.
Oh, that's been pervasive. They call it firewater. That's been going on since the 1800s, my friend. You don't really want to go down this discussion about the indigenous people and the shameful treatment of this by this country.
And the only reason I bring this up is because I went outside. I travel a lot, and I was at a bus stop, and it just absolutely broke my heart the way that the people are going after each other, and that a younger guy beat up this older gal because they were both drunk at 8 a.m. And I was moved. I was just cried. I'm like, how can we live in a society where this is now okay, and that we have fights going on with homeless people, and while there's refugees, illegal immigrants that are unvaccinated and that who knows what they're carrying kind of diseases are going up and getting treated the high-end things. Again, the red carpet treatment. I said, this is completely
let me tell you something else that seems to be plaguing these the tribal lands where the indigenous people reside. These sex trafficking seems to be a real big issue there. In fact, about a year ago, we did a podcast on that. Among other places in the country are these reservations. I have to tell you something that'll amuse you. My mother is Scotch-Irish and Cherokee Indian from Arkansas. Ancestry is traced back there to the early 1700s. My grandfather was half Cherokee. His mother was Cherokee Indian, full-blown Cherokee Indian. My grandmother, Ida Mae Counts, her father was full-blown Cherokee Indian. So I listen to everybody throwing these terms around. And my sister's the one that does all this investigating as to where we came from. Because my grandparents on my father's side came through Ellis Island. It was either the very late 1890s or early 1900s, because my dad was born in the United States in 1912. But, there's a whole nother discussion about the indigenous people here. And listen, this is the thing with life, guys. You make a mistake, don't linger or harbor on that mistake. Learn from that mistake and move forward positively. You have to learn from these mistakes, not continuously, remind everyone and beat everyone over the head about what a bad thing you did. You have to go forward, and we're not going forward. I have to say something, and it's a real simple statement. The word that is absent from this discussion today as well in this country is the word courage. We just lack courage to tell it like it is. You know, I can guarantee you there are a considerable number of Democrats, especially those in the bordering states, the 4 bordering states, that are alarmed with this issue at our southern border, which, by the way, I don't know if you've heard me before say this, but about a month ago, Christopher Wray, the FBI director, stated that the southern border to this country is a threat to our national security. Are you aware of that?
Yes, and that if you talk to any border agents, they also tell you that our country's being invaded and no one's doing anything about it.
Yeah, but let me just say this to you about the significance of your FBI director. He's not the top law enforcement official in the United States. It's the Attorney General, just so people understand. He's the second most important federal law enforcement official. He has come out and said that the management of the borders on our 4 bordering states is a threat to our national security. Wouldn't you think that would be the wake-up call for Washington, D.C., regardless of your political affiliation, that you draw a line in the sand? Right now, we have a governor, Abbott, declaring an invasion status in his state so he can now exercise different powers or prerogatives. Let me use a nicer word, prerogatives, in managing this southern border. You know, we're in complete disarray, but you know what the sad part about this is? It isn't just the southern border. It isn't just this rampant crime in your cities that's making people leave in massive numbers and businesses close. It isn't just the fact that this president decided first or second day into office to shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, which has thrown us into a power problem. It isn't just the fact that we borrowed $5 trillion, which is why you have an inflation rate, which, by the way, while we're on it, I'm listening to the president again give all this power to Putin, stating that the reason you have this increased cost in supermarkets and in your holiday season is because of Putin. So who positioned Putin to have this type of power? And by the way, that's just not true. Last week I had a gentleman on, Nick Lewin. Anybody's interested, he owns Crown Predator. It's an investment group. And he kind of simply stated, you borrow $5 trillion, it creates inflation, folks. And the way out of this isn't for a couple of years. This is like one thing after the other. And our foreign policies are just disturbing. We're entertaining Iran with development of nuclear energy, and we're looking at Iran with troops in the Ukraine and supplying drones to the Russians. Listen, I hate to say this to you. I have to let you go today, but I would like you to call back in because I want to continue this conversation with you. It certainly impacts you and probably a lot of people in your life, but please don't be shy about calling in. We're going to go to a quick break, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to come right back. We're going to take another caller. So let me tell you a little bit about Buzzsprout. Very interesting concept. Basically, it allows you to set up your own podcast. One of the most advantageous things about using Buzzsprout is it's user-friendly. So I encourage you highly, if your inclination is to create your own podcast, please look into Buzzsprout. And by the way, we use it. We're back, ladies and gentlemen, and I have someone calling in right now that swore they'd never leave New York. Let me get her. Hello?
Well, hello there.
How are you?
I'm good.
My understanding is... What's that?
You must address me as Miss New Jersey now.
Trust me. So I hate to hang this over your head, but if I have a recollection that you said you'd never leave New York.
I was never going to leave New York. And I still feel that I did not leave New York. I feel I am in the 6th borough of Jersey City.
No, Jersey City's not the 6th borough. I can see the Freedom Tower from my house. I can get into Midtown in 15 minutes on a disco bus for $5. That's including $1 tip because I'm nice. Well, Kat,
I can get tacos at 3 o'clock in the morning in my pajamas on the street. It's New York.
I have to just correct you. It's not. New Jersey's an entity unto itself that we at times would like to ignore is there. And it's also right. Separated by the Hudson River. So as much as you're trying to hang on, let go.
Right. But, I do check my armpits frequently to make sure that I'm not actually in the armpit of America. Take a good solid whiff, make sure, and I'm good.
Well, look, what you did was prudent. You know, listen, I recently had to admit I was wrong also, Kat, just so you know, because prior to November 8th, the midterm elections, I
Right.
was telling people that I believe that this was going to be an overwhelming response of people thinking as Americans, not political entities, not Republicans or Democrats. And I was wrong, because I looked at the election results in Florida, which should have been just replicated throughout the country, and they weren't, which is just telling me that people haven't had enough. And so I'm looking at the outcome of November 8th, and what I walk away with is that people would rather have their borders completely unraveled than to abandon the Democratic agenda. They are content with the fact that your cities are just unsafe to a degree that LAPD detectives like Jamie McBride will come on air live on a radio station, say, don't come to LA, it isn't safe and we can't protect you. And that's exactly what he said, that they're content with this economy, which is the byproduct of just destroying the energy sector in this ill-conceived way of transitioning us into electric, which we're just not ready for. No one's opposed to it. We're just not there. We cannot meet the electric demand that we have in the summertime in cities like New York. You're a resident, former resident of the city of New York.
Now.
Listen, I'm going to kick you when you're down.
Listen,
but
the
remember,
reason I left New York is not for anything else except that I just couldn't take the town I was living in anymore. I couldn't do it.
And
I
what?
spent the summer in Baltimore, the summer prior to this, and I had my freedom again. I was able to walk around. I didn't have to rely on my partner to take me to the grocery store. And then when we got back, it was just like, ooh, City Island, part of New York City, is great in and of itself. But unless you have a car and you're an old white Irish guy, it's just not the place for you.
I
am
am actually very familiar with City Island, because when you cross City Island back into the Bronx and you hang a left, you go to what they call Rodman's Neck, which is the range for the New York City Police Department where they train.
That's correct. That is correct.
Yeah, I'm very, very familiar. And I know all the good restaurants there.
I probably have served you seafood, sir.
What's that?
I used to be a waitress out there, so I probably served you seafood.
I've eaten in Artie's quite a bit, to be honest with you. I've eaten in a few places there. But City Island is changing. Is that where you were living?
That's where I was living, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
City
from
Island was
Queens.
nice.
City Island's nice to visit.
Where in Queens were you from?
Astoria.
Oh, I'm familiar with that as well. I went to school not too far from there, St. John's University.
Yes,
And Hillcrest is a community. So you're now in New Jersey, and what are you doing there, Kat?
I'm now in New Jersey. I'm still working, still doing film and TV stuff, but it's just so much more accessible. Like I said, I can see Manhattan skyline from our house. It's great. I love that. I'm a foot person, so I can get along and get where I have to go and do what I have to do on my own 2 feet without relying on anyone, which is, what I really missed when I lived in City Island. I just felt very stifled there.
I do want to ask you this, and you don't have to volunteer any information.
Oh, let's do it, baby.
How did you like? How did you feel about the outcome on November 8th?
I feel like a lot of people expected it to be this. What do they call it? The red wave? Is that what they were calling it? I think they expected like this huge overflow of redness going all over the place. But I feel like it wasn't exactly the voice that I was hoping for as far as the elections are concerned. When we moved to Jersey, it was a big thing for me because my insurance came from New York State. And in order to vote in Jersey, I had to change my address legally. Now, we still have our house in New York, so I could have kept my address, but I wouldn't have been able to vote. And so it was really important for me to vote. And in registering as a Jersey resident, I lost my insurance in New York. Fine, which is fine, but it was important for me to vote. I needed to make sure that I got my vote in and made my voice heard. I don't think a lot of people think that way.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people just
I'm
think...
struggling to figure out how people are thinking, to be very candid with you, but I just want to ask you a couple of very basic, fundamental questions, Kat.
Sure.
How do you feel about what's going on at your southern border?
I don't know that we'll agree about things, but I'll be honest with you.
Be honest with me.
I think, this country was based on freedom to exist, right? Freedom to live, freedom to be able to work, live, raise a family, and just basically exist. And I think what's happening at the border I think is becoming more. How do I say this without upsetting anybody? I think it's becoming very racist. I think there's certain people of a certain skin tone that don't want other skin tones around.
I think you know what? There's an element of that. You're 100% right, Kat. That's part of the problem. You're correct. But let's step away from that for 1 second, if you don't mind. I don't have an issue with any. I beg your pardon.
Can we though? Can we really step away from that? Because really, at the base of it, that's really what it is.
That's not what's driving the legitimacy of the argument of managing the border. In other words, if you're saying that we should let 5 million plus people into this country because
I'm not saying that.
Okay, but that's what it comes down to, Kat. I don't think anyone intelligent or progressively thinking is adverse to the migration process. Okay.
Agreed. But
right.
Don't you think that there's an unrealistic punishment that's being taken upon these people who are really just trying to seek refuge, just like our ancestors did?
Kat, the problem is this. Let me just say one thing to you. There are a lot of people that need to be let into this country for a myriad of reasons, especially women and children. Period.
Yes.
But you have to have a vetting process. And the manner in which
I agree with you.
The manner in which the borders are being controlled, okay, there is no vetting process. And now I'm going to say something to you that I've said numerous times that people have to listen to. Your FBI director, and they're not real popular these days, okay, your FBI management, came out a month ago in Senate hearings in Washington, D.C. and said the way that the southern border is being managed is a threat to your national security. So I do acknowledge the fact that we have some narrow-minded people here that are concerned about people's skin color. We still have that in general. There's racism in this country. This is not a racist nation. This is not a racist nation, but we have racists.
Really though, don't you think it is though, kind of in a way?
No, I do not.
I think there's a large portion of our population that is extremely racist.
You know what, Kat? You know what I believe? Wait, let me stop you. Let me be honest with you.
I just want to finish what I'm going to say. The last 4, 5, 6 years, they've been allowed to really let their racism thrive. They've been given permission by an orange turd to be as racist as they want to be, and they think it's okay. And it's not, though.
Kat, let me stop you for a second. I am so heavily traveled in this country, your head would spin, which is why I have the ability to speak on a variety of topics. I have a versatility. And I want to say something to you, and you have to just trust me.
Trust you.
Most people in this country, myself included, are way past this whole thing about the color of your skin. I really don't care. Let me go one step further with you. I don't care if you're straight. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're trans. I don't care if you're a guy and you like to dress like a woman. I don't care. Most people don't. This is being completely distorted in the way it's being presented to you through the media. Trust me, most people are just trying to get through the day here. And they've simplified this into terms like this. You're either good or you're bad. You're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. Believe me, Kat, I've been through California, up and down the East Coast, across this country, almost in every single state. And I read people like I read a book. Most people are way past that. We just don't care. This is the media. No, Kat, this is the media creating an optic and a narrative for you to make you think this country's racist. Please trust me. Nobody gives a good damn.
I do trust you. However, as myself, I am a first-generation United States citizen. My parents are both from another country.
What country, by the way? Mention the country.
Malta. They're from Malta.
Okay.
I'm the first one born here. I am a female. I consider myself to be somewhat of a comedian. Thank you very much. I am bisexual. I am funny. I am a woman that likes to dip in both rice bowls. And I am not liked by lots of people simply for those things, for being female, for being funny, for being somebody of people that are not actually from this country. Nobody's from this country. But I can tell you, and when people say trust me and believe me, I get it, I get what you're saying, and I do trust you, and I do believe you, but the thing is, I live it. I live it every day. I do see it. I do see the racism.
Where are you? Here's my question, because I was born in Brooklyn. I was the only white kid on the block, just for the record, folks. And I grew up in the city.
Are you Italian? Are you Italian?
My father's Italian. My mother was Scotch, Irish, and Cherokee Indian from Arkansas.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
you're getting a little different
You're
pitch on
23
things.
and me, baby.
I'm sorry?
I said you're 23 and me.
I think I'm 24 in you, but whoever. But I'm going to say this to you, Kat. There are toxic people everywhere in life.
There are.
That's the reality of it. And let me say something else to you, just so people clearly understand what living is. This isn't a popularity contest. So you have to, look, I've had a lot of detractors myself, and I could tell you in ways that would appall you, only because I happen to have this thing about loving the truth, because it's your guiding light, and I paid a heavy price for it. I've been around all types of trains of thought. I have to be honest. You're living in a different world than I am. I'm going to tell you this. Back in the 1970s, when Studio 54 was pumping, in the mid to late 70s and very early 80s, you were in that facility with everybody on the planet. Entertainers, politicians, athletes, business people, straight people, gay people, trans people. When you went to the bathroom, nobody took inventory of who anybody was. No one cared back then. Guess what? No one cares
Excuse
today.
me, I believe it's pronounced bathroom.
Who? Bathroom.
You're from Brooklyn. You're supposed to say bathroom.
No, my diction's actually better than that, courtesy of my mother. Remember, my mother had a little southern twang. Kat, we're going to take a quick break if you don't mind, and we're going to come right back because I want to continue this conversation because of this experience you're having. Guys, we'll be right back. This is Between the Lines. I do want to remind you, I want to thank Spotify. I want to thank also Instacart and Buzzsprout, and we'll get into later as to why. We'll be right back. We're back, ladies and gentlemen, and I have Kat from New Jersey on the phone with me.
Wow.
She ran from New York.
You're a
from New
demon.
York.
No, I wanted to keep my relationship. He didn't want to stay in Queens, and I didn't want to stay in City Island. So it was a compromise. He's a Jersey City boy,
and that's what life's about, compromise. That word
right?
we've
It's
suddenly.
about compromise.
I agree, but I want to tap into a little bit of your personal experiences, and these toxic individuals. Kat, they're everywhere, but that doesn't necessarily represent the masses. If you go into a specific area and you densely populate it with people, very small confined area like in New York, you get a lot of reactions from a lot of people that are very different and very diversified. Some of it's what we call a defense mechanism. Some of them are coping mechanisms. Some people just have not emotionally or intellectually evolved, which is what it sounds like you're experiencing. May I suggest you change the people you hang around?
Oh, no, don't even say that. You dirty dog. I am surrounded by very good people. I'm an observer.
Not the way you're talking about them, you're not.
I'm an observer. I see what's going on around me. And I want to believe what you're saying, which is most people aren't a certain way.
It's the truth.
I don't know,
Kat,
man.
I can just see
I
see the world that I live in, and the diversity of people, even in my own world. I don't know anyone in my sphere that just isn't receptive to anyone, based on need, based on their quality. I've owned a private.
I never said that.
Well, that was very kind of you. You didn't accuse me of something.
What I said was that there are more people than you think, probably, that, and I appreciate and respect what you're saying. There's a lot more people that are racist than you think are racist, maybe based on you saying most people aren't. Most people are.
Listen, let me ask you a question.
And we don't intend to be, right? I can even say for myself, I'm accidentally maybe doing certain things and saying certain things that I don't even realize might be racist, and it has to be pointed out to me.
The thing is, there's got to be a balance. There has to be a balance in these conversations today, because we're getting so hypersensitive and so overly political correct that you're afraid to think something or say something for fear there might be someone on the planet or in the universe that you're going to offend. This is the media. This is the media doing this. They're creating your narrative and your optic. Step away from them. Open your own eyes. Travel. I don't need the media to teach me about life or about political environments or about anything for that matter. And by the way, most of them, all they do is give you conjecture, opinion, right? It's nothing based in anything that they know. Most of them never had dirt under their fingernails. You know how I know that, Kat? I've worked for a lot of them. Please, you're talking to a different animal. I
No,
bumped up against a lot of different people.
Backstory.
You do, you know a little of it anyway. There's a lot more
I know
to it that I don't like to talk about
baby,
it.
You know a little bit of mine, I assure you.
You're right, but listen, Kat,
I assure you, I am extremely well traveled, and I've seen a lot of things. And as somebody that looks like me from a country that's so tiny that we, you know, what I am is unrecognizable to most people. I get mistaken for Spanish, Asian. I get mistaken for, you know, somebody from Spain. I get mistaken for somebody that might be possibly South African. I get mistaken for things all the time. And so I hear things all the time that people low grade say that they don't realize is racist because they think they're comfortable enough around me to say those things.
You know, the thing is, people just have to listen, Kat. I tell people something every day. You have to learn to relax a little bit. We're holding on too tight. Listen to me. Everyone's got to relax. We're holding on too tight. I agree. Kat, listen, I've got to go right now, but I want you to promise you'll call back in because I want to continue this conversation. I want to tell you this.
I'm a big fan of doing back and forth with you. I love it.
Okay. I'll make you laugh in closing. Some people have looked at me and said I look very Irish. My mother was blonde hair and blue-eyed. I don't have any of those attributes. And some people say I look Italian. So it's in the eye of the beholder. Kat, thank you for calling today, and I hope we hear from you soon.
Of course.
Thanks so much, honey.
Peace.
Bye now. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back. Well, we're back, ladies and gentlemen, and I just want to touch on Instacart and Buzzsprout, the two of our sponsors here, both user-friendly and both very legitimate, and that should be an important statement to you. I use them both, by the way. This podcast is built off the Buzzsprout platform, and it's been very successful, along with the support of our producers and Brian Williams, who's Capo de Capo, for those in organized crime, as captain of captains. In any case, you know, you probably listened to this today. It was rather interesting, you know, just to get out there and understand how people are thinking and to listen to their experiences and their perceptions of life, because, you know, that's where your knowledge has its origins in your perceptions. There's no question we are in trouble today, guys, you know, and what we need to continue to do is to have conversations, the purpose of which is to bring us to a better place. I wish that was the agenda of the media. It just simply isn't, and the media is heavily instrumental in the misguidance of this country and carrying out these distorted messages and lies. It just simply isn't true. And the conduct of many of the people in the media is just absolutely unacceptable. And perhaps the worst thing about it is there's no oversight. They're allowed to say whatever they want, whenever they want, to whomever they want, whether it's truth-driven, whether it's, controversial. I'll go back and I'll just mention this young man, Jonathan Capehart from MSNBC, referencing crazy white people and how he was afraid of them. Guys, this isn't something I made up. This isn't my opinion or conjecture. I listened to this on MSNBC on a Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. If they want to tell me that's their platform, that's the manner in which they choose to address the American public, then there's something very, very wrong. And he's just one small example. On the flip side of that are some of these less than discreet comments or assessments made by individuals like Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson. In life, you learn. It isn't what you say, it's how you say it. If you're going to say something, be constructive. Better yet, let me know when you're prepared to tell me how to fix the problems that are pigeonholing this country today, because I can do that for you. It's what I do for a living. And there's something on the screen about somebody's consigliere. Obviously, the producer watched The Godfather the other day, and he's obsessed with this word. Take that word down, you. Anyway, guys, we're going to call it a day. I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank the producer for reminding me about this organized crime term. And we hope to hear from you guys next week. It's Between the Lines. Don't be shy about contacting us. BetweenTheLines.tv. Email, phone in, send a pigeon. Thank you, guys. See you next week.